The bright Saturday morning should have been the happiest day of Rowan Mercer's week, but instead it became the moment his heart was shattered all over again. Standing outside the entrance of the city's busiest shopping mall with his young daughter clutching his hand, he watched a sleek black luxury car glide to the curb. The woman who stepped out was the same person who had once promised to stay beside him forever. Beside her stood a sharply dressed man surrounded by quiet confidence and expensive elegance. Rowan lowered his eyes, believing life had once again chosen to remind him of everything he had lost. What he didn't know, and what neither of them knew, was that the humble single father they barely noticed was the true owner of the entire mall where fate had just brought them together. If you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that hard work is never wasted, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad for more emotional stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Morning sunlight spilled across the polished glass walls of the shopping center as families walked through the entrance carrying balloons, shopping bags, and excited children. Rowan wore faded jeans, clean but worn sneakers, and a simple blue shirt with carefully stitched sleeves where the fabric had started to tear. His appearance never suggested wealth. Most people assumed he worked somewhere nearby, maybe as a delivery driver or maintenance worker. No one could have guessed that he intentionally lived quietly after inheriting the family business from his late grandfather, a man who had taught him that money should never become the loudest thing about a person's character. 5 years earlier Rowan's life had looked completely different. He had shared a tiny apartment with his wife, Celine, dreaming about building a future together. They had struggled financially, but they laughed through every challenge. Rowan worked long shifts while studying business management at night, believing that persistence would eventually create opportunities. When their daughter Maris was born, he felt richer than any billionaire. Every sleepless night, every extra shift, and every sacrifice felt worthwhile because he had his family. Everything changed when Rowan's grandfather unexpectedly passed away. Unknown to almost everyone, the elderly man had quietly built a successful real estate company over decades and left the majority of his holdings to Rowan because he admired his grandson's honesty more than anyone else's ambition. The inheritance included commercial buildings, apartment complexes, and the largest shopping mall in the city. Instead of celebrating publicly, Rowan asked the company's board to keep his ownership private while he learned how to manage everything responsibly. He wanted to earn respect through actions rather than wealth. But before the legal transfer was completed, Celine had already grown tired of struggling. She believed Rowan lacked ambition because she never knew the inheritance was coming. When a wealthy entrepreneur named Victor Halden entered her life with expensive gifts, luxurious vacations, and promises of an effortless future, she chose certainty over faith. Their marriage quietly collapsed. Rowan never begged her to stay because love that needed convincing was already gone. He accepted custody of little Maris after Celine admitted she wasn't ready for the responsibilities of raising a child full-time. Those first years as a single father tested every piece of Rowan's strength. He woke before sunrise to prepare breakfast, braided Maris's hair after watching dozens of online tutorials, attended school meetings, read bedtime stories, and secretly cried after she fell asleep because he wondered whether he was enough. The enormous business demanded attention, yet he refused to let money raise his daughter. Many executives questioned why the owner often visited properties wearing ordinary clothes and speaking kindly with janitors, cashiers, and security guards. Rowan believed leadership began with listening. Maris became the light that guided every difficult day. She never complained about their modest home even though they could have lived in a mansion. Rowan wanted her to understand gratitude before luxury. They celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes, planted flowers together every spring, and spent weekends feeding birds at the city park. She measured wealth in hugs, bedtime stories, and the way her father always remembered to pack her favorite strawberry juice. That Saturday they had visited the mall because Maris had saved allowance money for months to buy art supplies for a school competition. Rowan smiled proudly as she carefully counted every coin in her small purse, determined to pay for part of the purchase herself. He admired her determination because it reminded him of his grandfather. Then destiny arranged the encounter neither of them expected. Celine noticed Rowan almost immediately. Time had polished her appearance with designer clothing and sparkling jewelry, yet something restless lingered behind her smile. She approached with Victor beside her, expecting Rowan to look defeated. Instead she found a man standing calmly with his daughter, whose eyes still shone with innocence despite everything life had taken from them. Victor observed Rowan with polite indifference, assuming he was simply another ordinary father spending the weekend with his child. His expensive watch reflected the morning sun while shoppers quietly admired the successful-looking couple walking through the entrance. Rowan greeted them respectfully without bitterness because resentment had long ago become a burden he chose to put down. As they continued walking through the bright corridors filled with music and laughter, Celine couldn't stop comparing her glamorous life to Rowan's simple one. She convinced herself she had made the right decision years earlier, yet seeing Maris cling happily to her father unsettled her. Wealth had surrounded her daily, but genuine peace had become strangely difficult to find. Across the mall, employees greeted Rowan with warm smiles that looked surprisingly personal. Security guards nodded respectfully. Cleaning staff thanked him for helping arrange better work schedules months earlier. Store managers smiled with unusual appreciation. Victor assumed Rowan simply knew many people because he visited often, never imagining those greetings came from employees who deeply respected the quiet owner who regularly walked the building without announcing himself. A sudden emergency interrupted the comfortable rhythm of the morning. An elderly man stumbled near the central fountain and collapsed. Panic spread through the crowd as shoppers froze. Without hesitation, Rowan rushed forward, knelt beside the stranger, called for medical assistance, and calmly instructed nearby employees to clear space while comforting the frightened family. His years of first aid training through company safety programs immediately took over. Maris stood nearby holding the old man's wife's trembling hand, offering quiet reassurance far beyond her young age. Within minutes paramedics arrived. Their quick response, combined with Rowan's calm actions, stabilized the elderly gentleman before he was transported safely to the hospital. The crowd slowly relaxed, many thanking the humble father who had stepped forward when everyone else hesitated. Victor watched silently. For the first time he noticed something unusual. Every manager who arrived instinctively looked toward Rowan before making decisions. They treated his suggestions less like opinions and more like instructions. It was subtle, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once seen. Still, no one explained why. Later that afternoon the mall hosted an employee appreciation ceremony in the central atrium. Victor had been invited as a guest investor considering a future retail partnership. Celine happily accompanied him, expecting another glamorous corporate event. Rowan quietly led Maris toward the same gathering because she loved listening to live music. They stood near the back while hundreds of employees filled the open space. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage and smiled warmly before making an unexpected announcement. Today's celebration, he explained, honored not only the employees but also the visionary whose quiet leadership had transformed the company culture, increased wages, expanded family benefits, funded scholarships for workers' children, and personally ensured that no employee lost a job during difficult economic years. The audience immediately erupted into applause. Then came the words that froze the entire room. The presenter invited the owner of the mall, Rowan Mercer, to join everyone on stage. Silence swept across the atrium. Victor's confident smile disappeared. Celine's face turned completely pale. The ordinary single father she had once believed lacked ambition slowly walked forward holding little Maris's hand, greeted by a standing ovation that seemed to echo through every level of the building. Employees smiled with genuine affection rather than obligation. Security officers straightened proudly. Cleaning staff clapped with tears in their eyes. Cashiers cheered louder than anyone because they knew firsthand how often Rowan had quietly helped employees facing impossible hardships without asking for recognition. He accepted no dramatic praise. Instead, he thanked every worker for treating customers with dignity and reminded everyone that buildings never created success, people did. As the applause continued, Celine finally understood the painful truth. She had walked away from a man whose greatest wealth had never been hidden bank accounts or valuable property. His real fortune had always been his character, his patience, and the quiet strength that remained unchanged whether anyone knew he was rich or not. Months later life settled into a gentler rhythm. Victor respectfully withdrew from Celine's life after recognizing that appearances had mattered more than genuine connection. Celine slowly rebuilt a healthier relationship with Maris, accepting that trust could only return through consistency rather than promises. Rowan never sought revenge because forgiveness allowed him to keep moving forward without carrying yesterday's wounds. Maris eventually won first place in her school art competition. Instead of celebrating in luxury, she asked her father to spend the afternoon feeding birds at the same park they had always loved. Rowan smiled because that simple request reminded him he had succeeded in teaching the lesson that mattered most: happiness could never be purchased, only shared. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad so together we can continue spreading stories that celebrate love, resilience, and kindness. Before you go, please comment, "True wealth lives in the heart." Your words may encourage someone who feels forgotten today. As the warm afternoon sun settled over the city, Rowan watched his daughter laugh without fear, knowing that life had given him something far greater than revenge. It had given him peace. Sometimes the people who seem ordinary are carrying extraordinary stories, and sometimes the richest person in the room is the one whose kindness cannot be measured. In the end, fortunes rise and fall, appearances fade, and pride eventually crumbles, but a loving parent who never stops choosing compassion leaves behind a legacy that no amount of money could ever buy.